What if I told you that a baby dog spent over a day fighting for the lives of two innocent creatures asking for nothing but the strength to keep going? What would you risk to protect the ones you love, even if you were just a helpless kid yourself? Well, let me tell you about a morning that changed everything for everyone involved. This isn't just an animal rescue story. This is about love, sacrifice, and the kind of bravery you'd never expect to find in the smallest, most fragile creature. It started before sunrise on an ordinary morning in a small Oregon town. Officer Patrick Stevenson had been doing this job for 3 decades. 30 years of early shifts, quiet roads, and the kind of peace you only get when you really know your territory. He knew every curve of Mill Creek, every sound the forest made, every rhythm of life in a place where everything moves a little slower. That's why he noticed immediately when something wasn't right. There was a sound cutting through the morning air raw, desperate, heartbreaking. It wasn't anything he'd heard before in all those years on patrol. It was the kind of sound that makes your chest tighten, the kind that reaches into your bones and won't let go. Part animal cry, part plea for help, part panic, part absolute exhaustion. Patrick pulled over without thinking twice. 30 years of instinct told him to move. The sound was coming from the trail that led down to Mill Creek, and he knew from experience that timing mattered in situations like this. He grabbed his flashlight, radioed dispatch with a quick status update, and headed into the forest. The ground was still wet from the night, and the air smelled like moss and pine needles. As he got closer to the sound, the desperation in it only grew stronger. Whatever was making that noise was suffering. Whatever it was, it needed help right now. That's when he saw it. A puppy German shepherd, by the look of it, though it was hard to tell under all the dirt and neglect, was curled up on the trail, wrapped so tightly around a crumpled white feed sack that it was almost impossible to see where the dog ended and the plastic began. The puppy had its entire body draped over that bag like it was the most precious thing in the entire world. Like that bag held something worth more than food, more than shelter, more than its own survival. As Patrick moved closer, the puppy's cries got louder. It wasn't an aggressive sound. It was terrified. Pure, primal terror, mixed with determination. The pup pulled the bag even tighter to its chest, trembling violently. Its tiny muzzle pressed against the torn plastic like it was trying to keep something warm, keep something alive. Patrick had seen a lot in his years. He'd responded to accidents, domestic situations, all kinds of emergencies. But something about this moment felt different. This wasn't a scared animal that needed rescue. This was a protector. This was a baby that had taken on a responsibility so much bigger than itself. He backed up slowly, understanding that rushing in would only make things worse. The puppy needed to feel safe. The puppy needed to know that whatever it was guarding wasn't in danger. Patrick returned to his cruiser and made a call that would set everything in motion. He needed someone with experience, someone who understood animal behavior on a deeper level, someone who could look at this impossible situation and know what to do. Within 40 minutes, Sarah Jenkins from Wildlife Rescue arrived. She was the kind of professional who'd seen it all, patient, calm, with the kind of voice that made nervous animals believe everything might actually be okay. When they reached the spot on the trail, Sarah stopped in her tracks. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's just a baby." The puppy was shaking, pressed against that bag like it was the only solid thing in an uncertain world. Every muscle in its tiny body was taut with fear and determination. Sarah moved slowly, crouching down to the puppy's level, speaking in soft, measured tones. She explained what they were going to do, even though the puppy couldn't understand her words. There was something about her presence, something about the gentleness of her approach that seemed to calm the situation just slightly. But the puppy still wouldn't let go. It whimpered, turned its body even more protectively over the bag, and whined softly, almost like it was talking to whatever was inside, like it was saying everything was going to be okay, like it was trying to keep something warm, something precious. Sarah knew they needed to act, but they had to be careful. Rushing this could traumatize the puppy, or worse, could hurt whatever fragile life might be inside that bag. It took 10 long, patient minutes of gentle work. Patrick slowly slipped a soft towel over the puppy's small frame, while Sarah whispered reassurances. Even then, even after all that careful patience, the puppy fought weakly against them. It didn't want to let go. It didn't understand that they were trying to help. When they finally managed to open that bag fully, Sarah froze completely. The bag moved. Not much, but enough. Enough that both of them understood in that single instant that whatever was inside wasn't inanimate. It was alive. Sarah tore the plastic open wider, and there it was. 2 newborn puppies. Impossibly tiny, impossibly fragile. They were huddled together, their small bodies pressed against each other for warmth, barely breathing, their eyes still closed to the world. They were barely hanging on, and their fur matched the German Shepherd's perfectly. They were siblings. The realization hit both officers at exactly the same moment. The protective one, the one who'd been guarding that bag like his life depended on it, was their oldest brother. He wasn't being aggressive or territorial. He was being a protector. He was doing the only thing he knew how to do, keeping his baby siblings alive with nothing but his own tiny body. Sarah's voice came out, barely above a whisper. He was keeping them warm. How long? Patrick asked the question they both needed answered. At least a day, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. Maybe more. No mother, no shelter, no food. And he stayed with them. The German Shepherd puppy was trying to crawl back toward his siblings, even though his own body was exhausted and starving. Even in his desperate state, his primary concern wasn't his own survival. It was Sturse. Patrick gently lifted the older puppy, cradling him against his chest. You did good, boy. You did real good. The puppy's whole body seemed to relax. He sighed actually, sighed like finally. Finally, he could. Let someone else carry some of this weight. He could rest. He could trust that his siblings were safe. For the first time since the officers had found him on that trail, the puppy stopped crying. What happened next was the beginning of a rescue that would grow bigger than any of them expected. Animal control arrived, veterinarians got involved, and those 3 puppies began their journey to recovery. But the real story wasn't about the rescue operation itself. It wasn't about the logistics or the procedures or the institutional responses. The real story was about that moment, that impossible, heartbreaking, beautiful moment when a baby dog proved that love isn't complicated. Love isn't something you have to learn or understand intellectually. Sometimes love is just about showing up. Sometimes it's just about refusing to let go, even when everything in your exhausted, starving body is telling you to give up. That German Shepherd puppy became a symbol for something we all need to remember. In a world that can feel overwhelming and exhausting, there are still creatures, both human and animal, who choose to protect, to care for, to love fiercely despite impossible odds. That puppy didn't know he was supposed to give up. He didn't know he was too young or too weak or too hungry to handle the responsibility he'd taken on. He just knew that his siblings needed him, and that was enough. Stories like this remind us why we should keep our eyes open. They remind us why we should listen to the sounds around us, even when we're tired or busy or caught up in our own lives. They remind us that heroism isn't always about dramatic moments or grand gestures. Sometimes it's about one tiny creature, holding on with everything it has, refusing to surrender its most precious responsibility. So here, S, what I want to know, did this story hit you the way it hit everyone else who S heard it? Did you feel that weight? That love? That desperate, beautiful determination? If it did, if you felt something watching that puppy protect his siblings, then let me know. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what this story meant to you. And if you're the kind of person who believes in stories like this, who believes in the power of love and protection and never giving up, then stick around. There are so many more stories like this one. Stories that will challenge you and inspire you and remind you why we do what we do. Hit that follow button. Subscribe. Boom. Boom. Share this with someone who needs to remember that love is real, and that sometimes the smallest among us show us the biggest truths.